Well, good evening. It's nice to see you all here. Thank you for that rousing speech. I feel like I probably don't even need to give this talk now. I think she said everything that needs to be said. But what I want to do in the next 20 minutes or so is kind of give you a sense for why we do what we do here at New College. And not all of you are going to choose New College as your college of choice. But I'm hopeful that even if you decide not to come to New College, that you're inspired by this vision for what college can and ought to be, and that you find somewhere that pursues this. Because I think this is a vision that we desperately need in our time and in this place. So I'm going to start with quoting the end of a little novella by Evelyn Waugh called Scott King's Modern Europe. I would highly recommend. It's a satirical novel about this classics professor named Scott King who has been working in this English boarding school for decades. And he's quietly going about his research. And then he gets a surprise invitation to go to this fictional country called Neutralia in Central Europe. And so he goes and he sees the modern world for what it really is. And then through a series of adventures, he finds his way back to the boarding school. And the story ends with a conversation between the headmaster and him. And this is how it goes. The headmaster is speaking first. "You know," he said, "we're starting this year with 15 fewer classical specialists than we did last term." I thought that would be about the number. "As you know, I'm an old greats man myself. I deplore it as much as you do, but what are we to do? Parents are not interested in producing the complete man anymore. They want to qualify their boys for jobs in the modern world. You can hardly blame them, can you?" "Oh yes," said Scott King, "I can, and I do. I always say, you are a much more important man here than I am. One couldn't conceive of Grantchester without Scott King. But has it ever occurred to you that a time may come when there will be no more classical boys at all?" "Oh yes, often." "What I was going to suggest was, I wonder if you will consider taking some other subject, as well as classics, history, for example, preferably economic history?" "No, headmaster." "But you know there may be something of a crisis ahead." "Yes, headmaster." "Then what do you intend to do?" "If you approve, headmaster, I will stay here as long as any boy wants to read the classics. I think it would be very wicked indeed to do anything to fit a boy for the modern world." "It's a short-sighted view, Scott King." "There, headmaster, with all respect, I differ from you profoundly. I think it is the most long-sighted view it is possible to take." At New College, we share Scott King's vision, both of the state of the modern world, of why we're not here to fit people for the modern world, and why we're here to take the most long-sighted vision possible. But the headmaster is right. There is something of a crisis ahead. And in a lot of ways, I think it's already here. That was written in the 1940s, by the way. Okay, so why are we not here to fit people for the modern world? And what are we here to fit people for? Well, first let's start with the modern world. The modern world is not a place where real humans fit. And I think we can say this pretty confidently. It's been about a 120-year experiment, I would say. You can debate the age, the dates, but it's about a 120-year experiment of us trying a new kind of humanity on for size. The 20th century introduced a complete reduction of the nature of man, and kind of a new idea of man that stripped him of all teleology, that reduced him to an animal and a machine, that basically posited that what humans really are is they are organic machines. They're here to work, and they're here to eat and have sex and procreate. And that's basically what humans are here for. And if they want to have fun in the off hours between work, they can. That's the 20th century experiment. It's shifted a little bit here and there as we've gotten into the 21st century. But the essential kernel is still there, and it has been. That we've rejected this idea that man is made in the image of God. We've rejected this idea that man is a moral creature. We've rejected this idea that man is designed for eternity with the Lord. And instead, we've reduced him to an organic machine. Okay, and what has this new humanity, if we could call it that, led to? Well, it's led to a lot of things. It's led to the death works of the 20th century. It's led to the destruction of classical ideals in almost every facet of human life. It's led to a world, as Josef Pieper says, of total work. It's led to a world where more and more and more you have to argue for the basic elements of human life, as if that's up for debate. You have to argue that the family is a good thing. You have to argue that God made two biological sexes. You have to argue that marriage is between one man and one woman. You have to argue that it might be a good thing for children to grow up with two parents. You have to argue that religion and worship is a necessity of life. You have to argue that there's some sort of intrinsic goodness to existence. These things are up for debate because we have lost a sense of what it means to be human. And at the same time that we've lost a sense of what it means to be human, we're trying to introduce ways of optimizing humanity at the same time through technology. Because of course, if man is an organic machine, then technology should be the way for man to transcend his limits. So now we have transhumanism that is taking over the public consciousness. Ways that we can alter the mind, alter the brain so that we can become more enhanced as a biological machine. Artificial intelligence that can do our thinking for us so that we don't have to. All you have to do is be able to use the machines that you're given, and then you can do whatever you want. Another thing that we've lost in the midst of all of this is a sense of the soul. And that the soul, as Plato argues, essentially has three aspects. There is an appetitive element to the soul, there is an emotional element to the soul, and there's a rational element to the soul. The stomach, the chest, and the head, you might say. If you've read C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man, this might sound familiar. Well, what Lewis argued, I believe that was in the 40s or 50s, I can't remember, was that we've gotten rid of the chest. And we're just dealing with people in terms of their heads and their stomachs. I would argue that in some ways, we have all three, but they're all so radically disconnected from each other that we've still abolished human nature itself. On the one hand, this world offers you anything that you can feast your appetites on, and it says, have at it, go for it. Because you're an animal, feed your appetites. But on the other hand, this world says your emotions are really, really important. In fact, your emotions are the most true thing about who you are. Follow those emotions. Those emotions tap into what's truest about yourself and about the world. And at the same time, this world says that IQ is what determines the hierarchy of value. And that if you can enhance your brain, enhance your mental capacity, you can use all of the intellectual tools that are available, that you can become a god. See, you can find in our culture an overemphasis and overindulgence of each aspect of the soul. But you know what they're missing? They're missing the soul itself. And because they're missing the soul itself, they're missing how to integrate those three things together. And that's what we're told in the classical tradition, is that we are a united soul. A soul that works in harmony with those three parts. But we've lost that. Okay, so that's the modern world. I painted it in very broad strokes. That's the world that Scott King saw in Neutralia, more or less. I would argue that ultimately that's a world that actually doesn't have any humans in it. Objectively speaking, it does, obviously. There are real people made in the image of God. But there are people that have so lost their sense of humanity, and they're living in a world that's not fit for humans, that we're being dragged down into the realm of the shades. I would argue in a lot of ways this modern world looks more like hell than it does like heaven. Not to be too dramatic. But I'm going to circle back around to that image. Okay, so if that's the modern world, then I want to ask you a question. How did we get the modern world? How did we get the modern world? Well, there's a lot of explanations for how we got the modern world. There's economic explanations. There's global geopolitical explanations. There's worldviews. There's all sorts of explanations, and they all have their part. But the one I want to fixate on is education. Not that that's the only cause, but you can start to see that there was a shift in education around the same time. And I don't think it would go too far to say that modern education built the modern world. And at the same time, modern education is all about fitting people into the modern world that it built. So if you don't like the modern world, why would you go to a school that adheres to the education that built that world that you don't like? Why would you go to a school that educates you to fit into something that you're not made for? Now, there are a lot of Christian schools as well. I don't think this just applies to secular schools. I think this applies to a lot of Christian schools as well. And not to be too critical, but I think a lot of Christian schools think that we can take modern education basically as it is, and we can slap some Christianity onto it. And we have a good, solid Christian education. We can have a chapel service. We can pray before classes. We can have a majority Christian faculty. And therefore we have a Christian education. But I think we'd be hard-pressed to agree that if you take all the principles of modern education that has built the modern world, and you just try to slap some Christianity onto it, you haven't really got very much. You're just trying to baptize a shade. And I don't think we're supposed to baptize shades, from what I recall from my theology classes. Okay, so that's why we're not here to fit you for the modern world. Well, what are we here to fit you for? We're here to fit you, well, we can say a lot of things, but I am the son of a Presbyterian pastor, so I'm going to say three things, and they're all going to start with the same letter. We're here to fit students for war. We're here to fit students for work, and we're here to fit students for worship. Okay, war. We're here to fit students for war. Well, if this world is so garbage, let's go to war and destroy it. No, that's not what we're saying. Actually, the war is not with the world. The war we're trying to fit our students for is the war in their own souls. This is the medieval idea of psychomachia, the soul war. If you want to reclaim true education, you have to reclaim a sense of what it means to be human. And once you start to reclaim a sense of what it means to be human, you immediately are confronted with the fact that your soul is at war. We are made in the image of God. We are made for glory. Yet we are also tarnished with sin, beset by sin down to our bones. If you take the medieval idea of the great chain of being, we're beneath God and the angels, we're above the animals, and in this soul war, our sin nature is trying to pull us down to the animal, while the image of God and the power of the Holy Spirit is trying to pull us up to the divine. Here at New College, what we're here to do is we're here to equip students for the soul war that's going to define their entire lives. How do we do that? Well, this whole time that you're going to be here, today and tomorrow, is going to be looking at how do we go about that. We teach students how to order their loves. This is Augustinian idea, the ordo amoris, order your loves. If your heart is disordered, and what that means is that your mind is disordered. Read Romans 1. We have a very disordered mind, don't we? Our foolish minds are darkened. We need the light of wisdom. Who is the light of wisdom? It's Christ. We have disordered passions and affections that are at war within us. Augustine says that he fled God while he pursued God's shadow. That's what man is in this in-between world. We're here to order our affections that we might love the right things and love the right things in the right order. And we're here to order our appetites as well through discipline, so that we might not become a mere animal or an organic machine. In some ways, we're here to help students. We're here to cultivate the image of God that is present in every student and help it to grow up into maturity while they put to death the deeds of the flesh. Through thought, study, conversation, prayer, singing, mortification, and sacrifice, we're here to help the students order their disordered mind and their unruly passions. And we're here to set them on a life where they can do that very thing. We're preparing them for war. What about work? Work's important too. Our students aren't inspired to go just keep their heads down and wait for heaven. No, God's put them here and now for a reason. There's work to be done. Now, we do care about the jobs that our students get. And if you mind, I'm just going to do a little bit of a rabbit trail on statistics real quick. Statistics kill the mood. But I want you all to know this just in case. I don't know what colleges you're looking at, but in general, you've been sold a bill of goods about what traditional college promises. So traditional college promises basically two things. You're going to get a job, and you're going to have fun getting ready for it. You're going to have 4 years of fun while you get prepared to get that job, and you're going to get that job. That's what traditional college promises you. And they say, and it comes at a low price of the average of $38,000 per year. And if you go to a private school, the average of $63,000 per year, to add $1.8 trillion of debt to students, currently speaking, student loan debt, $1.8 trillion, and the average student loan debt being $40,000. So, you come for 4 years, you have a bunch of fun, you get prepared for a job, and you leave $40,000 in the negative. And, oh, by the way, you only have a 27% chance of actually working in the field related to your major. And, oh, by the way, 45% of college graduates don't work in a job that even requires a college degree 10 years after graduation. So if somebody told you, hey, give me $40,000, or give me, quick math here, we'll just say $120,000 over 4 years, so that you have a 27% chance of working in a field related to the major you're going to have in college, and you have a 45% chance of actually even 10 years from now not being in a job that even needs a college degree, but give me all of your money. Would you take that? Would any rational person take that? Maybe somebody fit for the modern world would take that. Okay, so that's the bill of goods that traditional college promises you. Now here's the bummer, is that because it's only really promising you two things, a job and a lot of fun, and side note, what they define as a lot of fun leads to addiction, depression, leaving your faith, tons of regret. I'm not saying that you would do that, but that's what they promised that they could give you if you want to indulge in that sort of thing. But even if you stay away from that, the one thing they're promising is that job. And if you don't get that job, then you've wasted 4 years of your life, over $100,000 of your money, and they don't care. They're done with you. You graduated, and now you're a statistic for that. One more of their graduates. Okay, that's the reality out there. Well, we don't really want our students to be strapped with a bunch of debt going into the world, because we want them to be free to serve God wherever God's going to send them. And debt makes it really hard to have the flexibility to do that. So we keep our tuition really low. We don't accept federal student aid. Our students graduate with no debt. They also graduate with a lot of work experience because they have to work in order to be here, because they don't take on debt. So they come out with no debt, with work experience, and as a real human being. Now, there's this great scene in the Aeneid by Virgil where Aeneas is going to the underworld, and he gets on Charon's boat to sail across the Acheron. Now, of course, the underworld is a world full of shades. It's hell. And it says that he was so substantive and weighty amidst the world of shades that he waved the boat down, and Charon was afraid that it would sink. Because he was a substantive, living human being. That's what we're trying to create from our students at New College. We're trying to make them substantive, living human beings. And if a substantive, living human being that's rational in a world of insanity, that is full of integrity and character, in a world that's very low trust, that is a good person who can think, who can speak, who can interact with other people, you put that person, a real human being, into a world of shades, they're going to be so much more substantive that I think they're going to succeed a lot better than people who have a paper degree telling employers they're good at something. So I think our students actually do pretty well in the world of work. But even bigger than that, we want them to be working towards something more than just making money. We want them to be working for the gardens that God has put them in to tend. We want them to be getting married, raising families, being very involved in their churches, being leaders and teachers in their churches. We want them to be engaging with their neighbors. We want them to be speaking the truth in love. We want them to be bold. We want them to be full of courage and zeal. We want their virtue to shine out and draw people to the Lord. That's their work. That's the work that they're called to, whatever money-making work they might do. We talk a lot about how we want our students to just live an ordinary life, but I actually want to refine that a little bit. Because if you're this sort of person, a spirit-filled person who is engaging in life with zeal and courage, who has the shining resplendence of virtue and the weighty sobriety of wisdom, you might be doing ordinary, mundane things, but that's not an ordinary and mundane life. That is a transformative life. Last thing. We're fitting them for worship. Really, we're fitting them for heaven. There's this great quote by Irenaeus that you've probably heard of, at least you've probably heard the first half. The glory of God is man fully alive. The life of man is the vision of God. That's what drives what we do here at New College. At the end of the day, God has put us here to work, but He is here to fit us for heaven. He is here to fit us for Himself. We are here, our highest calling among our many callings is to know God. Jesus said this is eternal life. that they know God. And so through worship, through conversation, through prayer, through fellowship, every day at New College is oriented toward our students knowing God. Because that's what ultimately we're made for. We're trying to fit them for heaven. So that when they get there, they can go, oh, this is familiar. A lot better, but familiar. That's what we're here to do. I want to end by sharing a quote from T.S. Eliot. He wrote this in 1932. He said, "The world is trying the experience of attempting to form a civilized but non-Christian mentality. The experiment will fail. But we must be very patient in awaiting its collapse. Meanwhile, redeeming the time so that the faith may be preserved alive through the dark ages before us, to renew and rebuild civilization and save the world from suicide." I think these words have only proved more true in the last century, as the world has drifted further into insanity and moral spiritual suicide. I choose to be part of New College Franklin because I believe that we aim in a very humble and very hopeful way to preserve the Christian faith in a faithless world, to cultivate a sacred space of sanity in the modern asylum, and to help young men and women be equipped for their journey toward heaven, as well as their mission to help renew civilization and save the world from suicide. Do you want to join us? Thank you.